So when I first started working in the juvenile justice system was when I was in high school in 1980 in the New York State Juvenile Justice System Division for Youth as a house parent at a group home. And I remember even from back then, the sort of ethic amongst the staff was we knew better than the parents. And the reason the kids were here is because the parents messed up. And we did very little to attract the parents to come to our facility for dinner, for therapy, for any reason. And this was a community-based group home in a city. It was in Binghamton, New York. And we did very little to bring parents into the fold. And I, looking back on those times, think we did quite a bit to discourage their presence. We were going to fix their kids and send them home all better. That was our job. And through the years, I ran it. I sort of interacted with parents groups. And then when I started to run the juvenile justice system in DC, we set up a parent's office inside both of our locked facilities. The parents could actually run their work right out of our office. And from that I became really sort of educated by parents about the struggles they go through and their hopes and dreams for their kids and how they felt they should be interacting with the juvenile justice system. So when the forum came up in New York, it was a natural for me to attend it. You guys invited me. I said yes right away. Yeah, so again, when I read the report, it really sort of pricked my conscience again and made me feel like we hadn't done enough at probation to bring parents into the fold at sort of many different levels. And so when I was on the panel, without asking my staff first, so I didn't have to run it by the committee, I said, we're going to impanel a meeting with the parents right now. There's so much rich stuff in the report and in the conversation that was going on that it'd be foolish to think we can have a one and done meeting and feel like we had done it justice. So we've been meeting regularly ever since. Some of the stuff has begun happening. We have a panel coming up to select a new contract, and the parents are invited to be on that. The regular meetings are occurring, and some of it's in the planning stages to be able to hire parents to help us with some of these issues. One of the things I've always found best as a way to reconceptualize the way any bureaucracy should deal with kids is, if this was my son or daughter, how would I want them dealt with? And similarly, I think we need to ask ourselves, if I was their parent, how would I want to be treated, right? So, so many of us spend so much time trying to pick the right school for our own kids. So why would we think that a parent of a juvenile delinquent, of a kid caught up in our system, wouldn't care about what program we're sending them to? Why should we pick? Like, we know something. We definitely know something. I'm not going to trivialize the experience and knowledge that my staff have, but it's not our kids that are going to go into these programs. And sometimes the parents are very insightful when they go, because now and all this evolves. At first we were just picking programs based on paper, but now we decided we want to have a site visit every time we're selecting a program. The parents are going to have good insights when they go to those programs. They're going to smell them out as parent and kid friendly in ways that we won't, because when we go in, we're probation, so they always treat us nice. So one other area in which parents are now involved in helping shape policy is when the city decided to take all its kids back from the state system, the Close to Home initiative, we formed a committee of key stakeholders, and now Jeanette Bocanegra is on that committee, and we're getting ready to add another parent to the committee as well. So that's a pretty high level place at the table with both commissioners of probation and child welfare, the presiding judge, the head public defender, the head prosecutor, the police, education, mental health, some advocacy groups, and there's a family presence there, and it's a very well-respected family presence. It clearly has impact, and Jeanette adds things to the conversation that, once again, none of us could really add because we just don't have that perspective. It's really interesting to watch staff become aware of parents' issues when they're sort of required to be around a table with them as equals, as opposed to when they're sitting across the desk from them kind of frightened because their kid's liberty is in jeopardy, right? And so at one of the meetings, one of the parents, and he started describing, we've been doing some really neat physical plant improvements. We got our juvenile waiting room in the Bronx, we did a nice overhaul of it, and we got artists to paint the benches. They used to have all this foul graffiti on them, and they rehabbed them and painted them. We put a flat screen up, put a bunch of educational materials. We put computers young people could work on while they're waiting. So it was a nice atmosphere. And he was describing us, and we were all feeling so good about ourselves, you know? And he said, and then one PO came out into the waiting room and ran up the one side and down the other side of this kid and just berated the kid in the middle of the room. And he said before that, we were all sitting and saying, you know, this is kind of nice. Probation's trying to give it, you know, making an effort. And he said after that, we were like, don't even make the effort if you're going to treat us that way. Just make it look like garbage again if you're going to treat us like garbage. Don't raise our expectations like you're going to treat us in a decent way, right? So that was very impactful, the way he said it. And, you know, I never know what my staff, a lot of my staff, they've been in this department 20, 25 years, right? I never know how they're going to react, right? So I was focused on this guy while I was talking. And then when he was done, I kind of looked over. There were 3 of my staff members sitting around the table with us all. And they were all doing this and shaking their heads. And I was really glad to see that. It wasn't, that would never happen. We would never be that way. They were all like, yeah, we know we got work to do. And that was to me, it was a very healthy moment for everybody. That now, you know, next steps is we are actually having something else happened similar to that, where we got some really strong feedback about our client service, if you will. And we are having very active conversations about client service right now. We're getting training. We're swapping out some of the guards and replacing them with greeters. We're doing a lot. It wasn't just because of that conversation, but I have to say that was a very impactful conversation. And whenever I talk to my staff now about the need for this, because it's sort of like, these aren't really clients, they're probation, you know what I mean? There's that attitude. I always tell that story. And that story really impacts my staff. They're like, yeah, that's right. That we shouldn't treat the kids that way. We shouldn't treat the parents that way. There's no call for that. And that's I don't know that we could have ever gotten that if we didn't meet with a parent. There's one of the issues that we're struggling with is sometimes on the juvenile side, we want to adjust the kid's case, or we don't want to place a kid in detention or a training school, and the parents don't agree. They fight against us. And sometimes as government workers, we're not the best person to have that conversation. And so we've begun talking about how could parents formally be involved in the family team meeting processes we're hoping to establish, from that to the adjustment stage, where they advise us on how to have that conversation with parents, or even maybe be available to us to say, well, I know it's the way you feel right now, and you want your kid's case formalized, but we have this other group. If you would like to talk to them, you know, here's their card. We would encourage you, because they're all a bunch of parents that have gone through it, and you may want to have a conversation with them.